Have you ever imagined what the world was like before the flood? A lost era full of mysteries, where giants known as Nephilim walked the earth. Secrets were buried, and entire civilizations disappeared without a trace. Today, we are going to reveal shocking truths that few people know about this forgotten time. Did you enjoy this journey? Give it a like now and subscribe to the channel to join our community of mystery explorers. That way, you won't miss any incredible discoveries like this one. Stay until the end, because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about the history of humanity. We have just opened a portal to one of the greatest mysteries in history, the world before the flood. Imagine an Earth completely different from the one we know today, a place where, according to ancient texts, extraordinary beings called Nephilim walked among men. The Bible, in Genesis 6:1-4, describes these beings as sons of angels with human women, giants of unmatched strength and stature. But it's not just the Bible that speaks of them. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text, and even Sumerian myths about the Anunnaki mention similar figures, suggesting that something grand happened in that lost era. So, who were the Nephilim really? Were they gods, hybrids, or something beyond our comprehension? Why were their stories almost erased from the past? Today, you are going to dive into evidence that few people know. From ancient texts to archaeological discoveries that challenge everything we've been taught about history. This video is not just about the past, it's about understanding what shaped humanity and why these secrets were hidden for so long. Stay with us, because every detail we're going to reveal could change your view of the world. And believe me, you won't want to miss the ending, where a surprising revelation awaits you. We've just opened the doors to this mystery, but now it's time to go deeper. Who were the Nephilim? Let's explore this question, because the answers may take us to places you never imagined. We begin with the Bible in Genesis 6:1-4, where we read that when men began to multiply on the earth, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took them as wives. The result, the Nephilim, described as the mighty ones who lived in ancient times, the men of renown. But who were these sons of God? Fallen angels, as some traditions suggest, or something completely different? The biblical text is enigmatic, leaving more questions than answers. And that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. To go further, we need to look at apocryphal texts such as the Book of Enoch, a document that, although not part of the biblical canon, was widely respected in ancient times. In it, the Nephilim are presented as descendants of rebellious angels, the so-called Watchers who descended to earth and united with human women. These beings were giants, not only in size but also in power and influence. The Book of Enoch describes them as creatures who taught men forbidden secrets, such as metallurgy, astrology, and even practices that corrupted humanity. But is all of this true, or just a story to explain something our ancestors didn't understand? And here comes an intriguing question. Why do so many ancient cultures speak of similar beings? In Greek mythology, we have the Titans, giants who challenged the gods of Olympus. In Sumer, the Anunnaki, described as divine beings who shaped humanity, appear in cuneiform tablets with stories that echo biblical accounts. Even Native American peoples speak of star people or giants who walked the earth in times immemorial. Coincidence? Or do these stories point to a universal truth that has been fragmented over the centuries? Let's consider modern interpretations. Some scholars believe that the Nephilim were simply humans of exceptional stature, perhaps kings or legendary warriors who inspired myths. Others go further, suggesting they could be hybrids, the result of advanced genetic experiments, maybe even of extraterrestrial origin. Sounds crazy. Perhaps, but ancient texts like the Book of Enoch speak of advanced knowledge that the Nephilim brought, as if they were from another world. What if these stories were not just myths, but records of something that actually happened? Another theory is that the Nephilim represent an advanced race that coexisted with primitive humans. Imagine a civilization with technology or wisdom far beyond what we know. capable of building monuments that still defy explanations today. But if that's true, why did they disappear? And what did the Nephilim have to do with the flood that changed the course of history? Before we can answer these questions, we need to understand the world these beings lived in. What was the earth like before the flood? What kind of society allowed the Nephilim to become legends? Now, let's dive into the setting of the pre-flood world, a place that seems straight out of a dream or a nightmare. Ancient texts, like the Bible, suggest that Earth was a paradise with abundant rivers, a uniform climate, and vegetation so rich that it sustained enormous populations. Some scholars believe the planet had a different atmosphere, with more oxygen, allowing humans and animals to reach larger sizes. Could this explain the accounts of giants like the Nephilim? Or was it just an attempt by our ancestors to understand a world that seemed magical? But what really draws attention are the evidences of advanced civilizations that may have existed in that era. Let's talk about Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site in Turkey that is revolutionizing archaeology. Discovered in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe is composed of enormous stone pillars, some up to 6 meters tall, carved with impressive details over 11,000 years ago. That's thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt or Stonehenge. How did a supposedly primitive society of hunters and gatherers manage to erect something so sophisticated? And here comes the burning question. Could the Nephilim, with their strength and knowledge described in ancient texts, have had something to do with it? Göbekli Tepe is not an isolated case. Around the world, we find megalithic structures that defy conventional explanations. In Bolivia, Puma Punku has stone blocks cut with precision almost impossible for the technology of that time. In England, Stonehenge raises questions about how stones weighing tons were transported for miles. And in Lebanon, at Baalbek, there are blocks weighing over 1,000 tons, something that would still be a challenge for our modern machinery today. How were these constructions made? And why do so many of them seem aligned with constellations or astronomical events? Texts like the Book of Enoch suggest that the Nephilim taught men advanced secrets, such as metallurgy and astronomy. Could these skills explain the megalithic constructions? Imagine an antediluvian civilization, guided by beings of superior knowledge, erecting monuments that were more than temples, perhaps centers of power, star observatories, or even portals to something greater. But if that's true, why did these civilizations disappear? And what does the flood have to do with all of this? Some researchers suggest that the antediluvian world was far more advanced than we imagine. There are theories pointing to a global network of trade and knowledge, with cities that could rival those of today. Others go even further, speculating that the Nephilim might have brought technologies of unknown origin, perhaps even extraterrestrial. Sounds bold, but when we look at these impossible constructions, it's hard not to wonder, are we underestimating the past? On the other hand, not everyone agrees. Some archaeologists say these structures were built by ordinary humans using simple techniques and a lot of effort. But even that explanation leaves gaps. How did people from 11,000 years ago have the knowledge to align stones with astronomical precision? And why do so many cultures separated by oceans tell stories of giants who taught mankind great feats? Let's reflect. What if the antediluvian world was more than just an era of myths? What if the Nephilim were the architects of a lost civilization whose traces we are still trying to decipher? Now, let's explore the impact of these beings on society at the time. Imagine an Earth where the Nephilim were not just mythological figures, but an active part of society. According to the Book of Enoch, these beings, descendants of rebellious angels and human women, were giants not only in size, but in power. Some texts suggest that they were leaders, almost like kings or gods, revered for their extraordinary abilities. The Book of Enoch says they taught men forbidden secrets, from the creation of weapons to mystical practices and astrology. But were these teachings a blessing or a curse? On one hand, the Nephilim may have driven incredible advancements. If we go back to the megalithic constructions, it's tempting to imagine that they led these projects. Perhaps they were seen as guides, sharing technologies that transformed primitive villages into centers of knowledge. But there's a dark side. Ancient texts, like Genesis, suggest that the presence of the Nephilim brought corruption. The Bible speaks of a humanity that became wicked in God's eyes, full of violence and sin. Could it be that the Nephilim, with their power, became oppressors, dominating men and leading society into chaos? The Book of Enoch describes the Nephilim as responsible for practices that unbalanced the world. They would have consumed resources excessively, enslaved populations, and even engaged in acts that defied the natural order. Some scholars interpret this as a metaphor for greed, but others believe these accounts point to a real, perhaps catastrophic impact. What if the Nephilim, with their advanced knowledge, triggered changes that made the world unsustainable? This brings us to the flood, a central event in so many traditions. In the Bible, Genesis 6:5-7 says that God decided to destroy humanity because of its corruption, sparing only Noah and his family. But why a flood, and why so drastic? Some texts, like the Book of Enoch, suggest that the flood was a divine cleansing, not just to punish men, but to erase the Nephilim and their influence. It was as if the world needed a reset. But was the flood merely a natural catastrophe, or was there something more behind it? And what happened to the Nephilim after the flood? The Bible mentions the Rephaim or Anakim, possible descendants of the Nephilim, who appear in Canaan like Goliath, the giant faced by David. This suggests that some Nephilim or their descendants survived. But how? Some believe they had technology or knowledge to escape, perhaps hiding in isolated places. Others say their influence survived in cultural memory, transformed into myths of giants. On the other hand, some see the flood as a symbolic event, a way to explain the fall of an advanced civilization. What if the flood was not just water, but a deliberate erasure of an era that humanity was not ready to understand? But did the story of the Nephilim end with the flood? Or did they leave traces that we can still find today? Let's dive into modern evidence. Over the centuries, reports of giant skeletons have appeared. In the 19th century, newspapers in the United States published stories about bones of beings over 2 meters tall, found in ancient tombs. In Europe, excavations revealed skeletons of unusual sizes associated with legends of giants. Although many of these findings were dismissed as hoaxes, some remain unexplained. In 1833, in California, workers found a skeleton nearly 3 meters tall, buried with unknown artifacts. What happened to these bones? Many disappeared, supposedly taken by museums or collectors. Is this just coincidence, or is there something science doesn't want us to know? Beyond the skeletons, newly discovered texts continue to fuel the debate. The Dead Sea Scrolls, found in 1947, included fragments of the Book of Enoch, which details the story of the Nephilim. These texts, hidden for centuries, confirm that their stories were widely known. More recently, Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets mention divine beings with characteristics that resemble the Nephilim. Are these documents merely myths, or do they point to a buried truth? Now, let's look at modern theories. One popular idea is the ancient astronaut theory. Proponents, like Erich von Däniken, suggest that the Nephilim could have been extraterrestrials, bringing advanced technology. They point to megalithic constructions as evidence of knowledge that humans of the time could not have possessed. The accounts of sons of God descending from the heavens would be descriptions of beings from other worlds. It sounds like science fiction, but the astronomical precision of ancient monuments makes you wonder. How did they know so much? Another theory suggests that the Nephilim could have been the result of genetic engineering created by an advanced civilization. This would explain the accounts of giants and the knowledge they are said to have taught. Modern advances in genetics show that such manipulations are possible. Could it be that our ancestors already mastered something we are only beginning to understand? On the other hand, some see the Nephilim as a mythological construct, Exaggerations of historical leaders turned into legends. The flood, in this case, would be a metaphor for natural catastrophes. But how did so many cultures, separated by oceans, tell such similar stories? What if the Nephilim were more than myths? What if their constructions, stories, and even descendants still influence our world today? Think of the legends of giants, the monuments that defy explanations, and the texts that continue to surface. Science is beginning to explore these questions, but many answers remain hidden. What does this mean for our history? We've reached the end of our journey through the world before the flood. A time of giants, mysteries, and secrets that challenge everything we think we know. From the Nephilim, described as beings of unparalleled power, to the megalithic constructions that puzzle archaeologists, we've explored a past that seems more fantastic than any fiction. We've seen how the Book of Enoch and other traditions portray the Nephilim as leaders, teachers, or oppressors, whose influence may have led to the flood. Modern evidence, from anomalous skeletons to newly discovered texts, suggests that this story is far from over. Whether as myths, real beings, or something beyond, the Nephilim force us to ask, what really happened in that lost world? And what if the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, Puma, Punku, and Baalbek are fragments of a civilization far more advanced than we imagine? Now you know what few people do. A story that connects ancient texts, archaeology, and theories that challenge science. This is not just about the past. It's about how it can change our view of the present and the future. What do you think really happened? Were the Nephilim the architects of a golden age, or the ones responsible for its destruction? Stay tuned, because the mysteries of the past are still being uncovered. What an incredible journey, right? If this dive into the past fascinated you, leave a like now. It helps us bring more stories like this. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Our community of explorers is growing, and we want you with us, uncovering the mysteries that history has hidden. In the comments, tell us what you think. Were the Nephilim real giants, gods, or something more? Which mystery from the past would you like us to explore next? Your opinion makes all the difference. We have other videos about ancient secrets waiting for you. See you in the next video, and may more discoveries come.